The March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom took place in Washington, D.C. on August 28, 1963. And it was attended by some 250,000 people, if you will. It was the largest demonstration ever seen in the nation's capital, and one of the first to have extensive television coverage, okay? So let's start off, and I want to share a couple of thoughts with you here. I've known Reverend C.L. Bryant now for a few years, and I have to tell you, how many in the room have seen the documentary Runaway Slave? Put your hand up, please. Okay. So now, I'll be honest with you, if you didn't have your hand up a moment ago, how many haven't seen the Runaway Slave? See, I always like to point out the bad people. So, you all seen the hands there, right? Anyways, all right, so listen, I watch a lot of documentaries. I love documentaries. They're great. You learn something from them. And the one thing I can say to you is this, and I've told people around me, and they know this, and I talk about it on radio all the time, that The Runaway Slave, in my opinion, it really has been the best documentary I've ever seen. Do you all agree?
Yes. Yes.
It's a great piece of work because you learn something you didn't really know. You know, you come away from that film and you learn some things you couldn't have possibly. Most people go, "Wow, I didn't know that." And the funny thing about it is, it is a bipartisan effort. So Democrats and Republicans both like it, and there's not a hell of a lot that Democrats and Republicans seem to like these days. So, I want to start to talk to you about where our country is right now. One of the things I talk about on my platform, and my voice is heard every day around the country on national radio, and also our television platform, Malcolm Out Loud TV. And I'll tell you this, when it comes to civil rights, and you see the civil rights leaders, and I don't even want to use the names, because I don't want to use it, because I don't consider them civil rights leaders. I call them race hustlers, is what they are, really. And when you compare who the media attracts with civil rights and puts those guys on a pedestal, I want to tell you something right now. And this is the God's honest truth. And in all my years, and anyone I've ever met, Reverend C.L. Bryant really is America's civil rights leader. That's what I see him as really a civil rights leader, because he really is that, and he gets it. He's fair, he's equitable, he understands the issues. And let me tell you, folks, when we talk about rights, and I think it's more about human rights than civil rights. I really do. And it's not a black-white thing. It's men and women. You know, the other day I was looking, and still women are only making about 75% of what men. Something's wrong with that picture, right, Kelly? Right? So something's wrong with that picture. So, you know, inequality happens in many, many areas, and it's just, I think it's a human problem. It's a human condition, and people need to get over it. And I think treating people fairly is all part of the challenge ahead. So I think that's what we got to do. So the question I want you to ask yourself today, as Reverend Bryant and I were talking last night, ask yourself this question, please, to yourself, and ask yourself later, what kind of footprint are you going to leave in your lifetime? What is the footprint that you're going to leave? And that really is the question we all have to ask ourselves. It's an important one. It's an important one to me, and I think it should be to you as well. So when it comes to leadership again, it really is a focus of our country needing more leadership. We need people at the top who care, who can break down the barriers of party. Republicans and Democrats, black and white, men and women, because these are dividers at the end of the day. So they're not a path forward. And if we're going to build a bridge, we've got to do it through the Underground Railroad, folks. That's going to have to be that bridge. We have to get to the other side. It's been a journey, but this journey really continues on, and we're really just beginning, if you think about it in those terms. So, all right. The Runaway Slave movie, you've got to see it if you haven't seen it. It is a fabulous, fabulous documentary. It's just an eye-opener, and you just learn so much from this. But by the way, it has won, and I want everybody to know, which is a very high honor, the Crystal Dove Award. as well as many other awards. So this is a great, great film. And by the way, I'm excited, you probably already know this already, but Reverend Bryant is in the process of a whole new film that will be working on throughout this next year. It's a big job. And get a load of the title of this. Are you ready? Red, White, and Black. How does that sound? I love that title, man. If that doesn't say, you know, shut the hell up and move the conversation along, I don't know what does. All right, so let's start off with Pastor Smart. We want to say the invocation, please. Is Pastor Smart here?
Good evening. Good evening. Shall we stand as we approach all three? And let us bow for prayer. Our God and Heavenly Father, we do praise thy name today, for thou art worthy. We thank you for life. We thank you for liberty. Thank you for your graciousness towards us and for the opportunity to meet at this time. Lord, we ask that your presence be sweet in this place, that you grant liberty to speak and clarity of thought, that the message be loud and clear without any ambiguity. Thank you for your blessing us upon America. May you continue to give us the opportunity to live in a land where we can worship you freely and honor you each and every day. We ask for your presence, we ask for your peace, and we ask it in Jesus' name, our Savior and Lord. Amen. Amen.
Okay, thank you. And we'll stay standing, please. And Samantha Jones. And Samantha Jones will sing the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, Samantha Jones. Colonel Montero will lead us in the pledge. Colonel?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, everybody may be seated. Okay, as we begin tonight's performance again, I'm sure you'll remember to shut the cell phones off, and we're going to start and seat our panel. And as I call your name, if you kindly come up and we'll say a few words about you. And as you do, we'll take, as the panel seats, just don't take the last seat here and the last seat here, but all of the middle here. Let's start with Pastor Tito, please, who is Tabernacle of God Church in Tampa. Pastor Tito of the Christ of the Nations Institute, where he is an ordained minister and serves as pastor there. Jonathan Paul Watson. Jonathan is an educator, subject area leader for social studies with the public school system, teacher of the year twice, and he loves and promotes the Constitution. By golly, we could have you teach a few things to the politicians in Washington, brother. I didn't know people were still reading that Constitution. I thought that was long gone, man. No idea. Next up, Dr. Samuel Wright, and he's retired university administrator, USF, for nearly 27 years. He served as the Associate Dean of Student and Parent Relations, a Director of Multicultural Affairs, and Director of Multicultural Admissions, founded the Tampa Bay Black Heritage Festival, which I've been to, by the way, and is actively involved at the state level as a member of the African American Task Force. So welcome. And Pastor Smart, please, of Victory Baptist Church. Pastor Smart has a doctorate in ministry and theology from Landmark Baptist College and author and past director of the Victory Baptist Bible Institute. Next up is William Lawson, host of the Willie Lawson radio show on Blog Talk Radio. All right. And Colonel E.J., we know him by E.J. E.J. Otero, retired Air Force. Colonel? We're going to do one more cheer. All right. All right, and lastly, you have myself, Malcolm Out Loud, and introducing myself. There are no words I can basically use. Basically, I'm a national news and political commentator. I'm heard on radio every day in America, United States, across the country, and in Canada. I speak on many, many stations and speak about today's problems, headlines, whatever they may be. Political news, social, cultural. If you're looking for a little truth, you probably tune in. If you want to be buffaloed, I'm not your guy. That's real simple. I get to the bottom line. Also, I do what's called the Out Loud Minute, which it's podcasted as well as on iTunes, but it plays on 600 to 700 radio stations every day in America. And it takes the headline of the day and really synthesizes it in 60 seconds. So it's pretty cool. And they're giving those politicians hell the last few days, I can tell you that. So it's a great forum. And our national news magazine is MalcolmOutLoud.tv, where we've been now just birthed our 3rd year celebration, and we invite you there. In fact, we've done a show with Dr. Samuel Wright, a fabulous show on race relations in America. Dr. Bryant, Reverend Bryant's been on the show many times, and my national radio show as well that I host out of Salt Lake City. So thank you for being here. And again, one last thing on myself. You'll hear more and more about my mission, but GetInvolvedGetLoud.com is where you go. GetInvolvedGetLoud.com and make a difference, folks. So, all right, so listen. Reverend C.L. Bryant, again, as I've already pointed out to you, I truly, truly believe that he is America's civil rights leader. I think he's a no-nonsense guy. He gets it. I've been impressed from the first moment I've met him. We had the pleasure last night of enjoying a wonderful dinner with him and his wife Jane. Absolutely lovely. Just absolutely love Reverend Bryant. You know, he's a senior fellow at Freedom Works, which you probably know, out of Washington, D.C. Reverend Bryant is a visionary Baptist minister and the former president of NAACP's Garland, Texas chapter. He founded One Nation Back to God and created a documentary titled Runaway Slave. Also has an MBA in theological studies. You know, you meet people along the journey of life, folks, that you know you're going to keep, right or wrong, right? Every day we're blessed to meet interesting people. Meeting you today, I always like to cherish that moment of time. And it really is. And that's, Reverend Bryant's one of those people you kind of keep with you on the journey. And that's what I think you'll find out about him. You'll be hearing more and more about him across this great country of ours. We need more leaders like Reverend Bryant out there doing the right thing. And that's what this is all about. As this Content of Character Tour kicks off in grand fashion in 2014, I look forward to my journey with Reverend Bryant, and it's such a pleasure to call him a friend. And we'll bring him up now, and everybody, let's give a round of applause for Reverend Bryant!
Thank you so much. My friends and Colonel, it is great to be on to share this platform with you and all of the rest of these very distinguished men. My good friend Malcolm, and his last name really is out loud, and but it's good to be here with you. And of course, I want to thank the organizers of this event tonight who helped me put on this kickoff version of the Content of Character Tour that will sweep the entire country on college campuses and venues like this across this nation. Our nation is divided. Healing must come, and it starts with all of us. Republicans, Democrats, independents, black and white. It must happen. I believe that America is the greatest success story that the world has ever known. Someone once asked, why would you make a film with a title that is so inflammatory as Runaway Slave? And before the night is over, I'll share with you why we call it that. But I think that you are going to see for yourself. Tonight we have an opportunity to share our differing views and opinions. I encourage each and every one of you to write questions and comments on your papers that you were handed when you came in. It's going to be important toward the middle and toward the end of this, because this is an interactive, will be an interactive type of forum today. You're going to find that next year when we come back to do this, we will need a room 3-4 times the size. You will be, and you are a part now, of a very history-making event. A part of an event that will begin to heal our land, heal our nation. As a minister, I always invoke the presence of God to come and heal our land. But regardless of what you believe or how you are situated as far as your faith or non-faith is concerned, we're Americans all. And it's a great land that we must preserve, because, believe it or not, she could go away. And if America goes away, as one of my friends and personal heroes, Lech Walesa, said to me when we were in Phoenix together earlier in the year, he says to me, if America goes away, where will people fleeing tyranny go? And so, my friends, we live in the greatest land on the face of the earth, lover or not. But tonight, we're going to see some things that have, in fact, divided us down racial lines, down party lines, And we want to talk about those things because one of the things that's truly missing in this country is conversation. And honest yelling. Not the in-your-face stuff. But friends, let us reason together. And let us, as Americans, bring about some solutions to what may ail us. Gentlemen, it's going to be a great ride. It's going to be a fun ride tonight. Malcolm, thank you for joining me on it. You, let's see, where are you going to sit?
I'm going to sit right over here.
Okay, and this is going to be your, is that the mic that doesn't work?
That's
you
the one I
would
gave
give
you.
me Yes, I do. Mark, if you'll roll the first clip.
The slavery of the mind and of the will. Are we truly not free at last?
The dependency that almost was necessary on government programs in the 60s do not serve the people today that have been liberated. The civil rights movement was not only to liberate people physically, but the civil rights movement was also to liberate a particular mindset of dependency. Here we are coming into Atlanta, Georgia, a place that was the heartland of the Confederacy. Slaves bought and sold here in Atlanta, the epicenter of the civil rights movement, birthplace of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Here we are on Peachtree Street, formerly Whitehall. This very street is where slaves were bought and sold. Have the sons and daughters of former slaves traded one form of slavery for yet another? Have we traded one form of slavery, the shackles, for another form of slavery?
I'll say yes, but I won't say it was voluntarily traded. You know what I'm saying? It was a compromise trade. A lot of times when you take something away from somebody, you have to give them something.
I have noticed that most Africans that come to this country don't necessarily want to associate themselves with the American black. Why is that?
It is because they feel we have lost our footage. They know that we are intelligent, and they can't understand how people in America, however, be still enslaved in their minds in this day and time when freedom is all around you.
Are we too dependent upon government as a community?
Yes, we are. And the government, honestly, is not for the black community. They say they are, but they're not.
That's very interesting that you would say that, because so many of us really believe that government is our answer.
No,
Why
it's
do you
not.
say it's not?
Because look at us now. Look how we are.
What was the pride we once had? Strength in the face of adversity. For most Black Americans, our history has been a difficult road, but freedom has always been at our core. Is there something from our past that can help us today?
Gentlemen, the first question that I have for you, and actually I think I'm going to. The first question that I have for you is this. Looking at the condition of the black community and looking at the condition of America, Can we truly say that we're free at last? Reverend, Doctor, I'm going to start with you.
No, we're not free at last. There are a number of people, as you've alluded to, there are a number of people whom you alluded to are still enslaved in their minds. They're yet to be freed. They are dependent on a system which is continuing to fail them to some degree. So I would not say that we're free. I'd like to add, though, that I believe conditions in America are somewhat better by the fact that white people and black people and Latins and others are much more civil towards one another, if I were to say that. And I think we've made some gains, but yet we are not free, because when you think of the number of people who are yet impoverished and living below the poverty lines, people who are working daily, who are not getting an average wage, they're without health care, and this country chooses not to let them want them to have it, I think we have some real serious issues. And even today, I almost teared watching television knowing that children, there's an oxymoron in this country that we're saying to parents who want you to work, but yet kids who are in Head Start, they won't have a place to go soon because of this shutdown in America. Something is wrong with that picture. So we got to get our act together in terms of what we want people to do. We want them to work, then we need to give them the vehicles to support them so they can work and not allow them to be in a situation where they don't have the appropriate child care.
Colonel, I know that you have an incredible story. Tell us, what do you think about American freedom? Are Americans trading freedom for yet another form of slavery in this country, in your opinion?
I think so.
And
the way
and it is not just racial, it's not just...
Some groups may have fallen into that category in larger numbers than others. But the fact of the matter is that we have been developing a dependent society that everybody is falling into it, regardless of ethnic group or racial group. We find ourselves constantly, regardless of the community that you're from, in my community, the Hispanic community, there is always the crutch of trying to justify what is happening and what we're doing and putting it on somebody else. And that is not what our forefathers did. The Hispanic community have had many migrations. You have the Cuban migration, the Puerto Rican migrations at the beginning of the 20th century to Hawaii, and they were workers. The Cuban migration in the late 50s, early 60s built Miami what it is today. And what you have right now, the Colombian community, which is growing now, is migrating now. They're looking at business. They're business thinkers, and on and on and on. The black community, when I look at my friends in the black community, it is a very rich history. The economy of this country would not have thrived or succeeded in the 19th century and the 18th century had it not been for the black labor. Had it not been not only for the black labor of you do this because I'm telling you, but because of their intellectual prowess in developing better ideas in getting the task done. Yes, sir. As opposed to waiting for somebody to tell them what to do. So when we find ourselves in a situation in which some leaders in the community have taken the voice away from us, and they have become the spokesman for all of us, when we have no idea what they're saying, or we agree or disagree with what they're saying, they have taken the power away from us. So the idea of Dr. Martin Luther King back in 1968 and what he wrote in the Birmingham Jail letter, which I invoke everybody to please read it, because a lot of people say, Dr. King, Dr. King, Dr. King, they have no idea what he said in the speech in the Lincoln Memorial, and they have never read the Birmingham Jail letter. I have. So, and actually we study at the War College. He's one of the great leaders that we study. So when you read those things, you realize that nobody can speak for you. You only can speak for yourself. Dr. King, he never spoke about individual politicians, individual races. He spoke, the enemy was an issue. If you happen to belong to that issue of discrimination, regardless of your race, we're coming after you, peacefully.
Reverend. The pastor. Where does the pastor fit into this scenario? Do we have the leadership from the pulpit that we once had 40, 50 years ago?
Well, I don't believe that we have the leadership on a national scale that we need to have. There are certain exceptions. Let me just say that the introduction of a substandard educational system has had an impact on the prosperity, the success, development of the African American culture in this country. And in some instances, I believe it was done intentionally. Now, what the pastor needs to do, and I can speak for myself and from other men that I associate with, I believe we need to get back to clear exhortation on biblical precepts. Because without the Word of God, without the Bible being introduced into the community, then you'll have a perennial and persistent ignorance. And if you're ignorant about the knowledge of God and His wisdom, then you'll be ignorant about many other things as well. And so the introduction of biblical precepts, pastor is to do exactly what the apostle recommended to his protege Timothy: preach the word, be instant and season out of sin.
Thank you so much.
Let's get that mic back so you've got it.
Pastor Tito, are we fixed with that one? Pastor Tito, you're a young man. What are you seeing as far as the effects in the 2000s on young people? What are we missing here? I know how old you are, so you're old enough to know where the transition was. Is there something that they're not linking into that causes them to miss out on the story of America?
Well, to be honest, even on my journey is pretty recent. I mean, my family I was the first one born on both sides of my family, Cuban immigrants, here in the United States. And to be honest with you, I had no clue what really being an American was. I was just, I guess, too busy having fun, enjoying just freedom. I just thought it was normal. You know, I just grew up with it, so I just thought it was like that. And really until, well, 9/11 was really one thing that really sparked me. Actually, I was a freshman across the street over at USF studying political science. First semester that happened, and that's when everything just kind of really, for me, started to click. But I don't know, I mean, for most of my friends, they're just too busy YOLO having fun and just living up their life. I only got one life, and it's just all about, it's very me oriented, and a lot of what, you were mentioning about men, when it comes to the gospel and talking about God's word, and especially me as a pastor, try to focus, look at your eyes off yourself. It's not about what you can do and just living it up and then, spending all of your, those coming behind you on their credit. And so it's just caring. I guess
Let me see the hands of everybody that's born in the 90s out there. Everybody's born in the 90s. Okay, you see, that's almost 40%. 40% of the crowd. You put your hand down, I see you. You're born in the 90s. 18. Okay. How many of you can relate to just having fun, living your life as a young person, not really knowing or even caring what America's about? How many of you know that? How many of you know a young person like that? They just ride the wave. Malcolm, what do you think about that?
Well, today I had on a group of millennials on my national radio show this morning, okay, Reverend Bryant, and it's called, get a load of this, I don't know if you heard of the group out of Washington, D.C., The Can Kicks Back. So you've heard of this thing we use in politics all the time about politicians kicking the can down the road, kicking the can, kicking the can. So this is the can kicks back. This is putting them on their asses, is what it is. And it's the millennial group. It's the folks you're talking about, Dr. Bryant, who were born in the 90s, and they've got together, they're tired of it, and they're getting behind a movement to get the politicians and our government to be responsible for many things in society, because this is all an overflow effect that is conditioned in our minds. Really, it truly is. Listen, the bottom line is this. It comes to the power that politicians seek. And I think when you come back to the black community or any other community for that matter, it always comes back, it's enabling or disable. Government doesn't want to enable people to succeed, they want to disable people. Because the more they can disable you, the more they can grab the power to get into high office and keep feeding off of us. And that's the problem, man.
You are an academic. You work in academia. What are you seeing as far as the change? Is there a change? Has there been a shift in what we are passing on to the next generation?
Well, I'll say that, like you were saying earlier, they're so focused on themselves. They're taking the freedoms we have for granted. That's what the younger generation is doing. And it's a me society. Even when we talk about the gospel that people hear now is about me, what can I get from God, what can I do? So you have the hard gospel is hard to preach. I had to say that with a comment. So when I even see children who are coming in, they're basing their ideas from what they hear from their parents. And their parents also are me, trying to give the students everything, the kids everything they want, and they think they need and so forth, so they're spoiled. However, in the state of Florida, the one positive thing is that they changed the civics education in 7th grade. Now, it seems a little young for that, but I find that this is a good time to start getting them inspired. So a lot of students, they come into my class, they come into the classes, and they have this me idea, but when we start talking about the Constitution, start talking about the government, and start relating to them, you know, that this is no joke, this is not for free, I think many of them are becoming more and more receptive to it. However, we still got to break through that whole meism and that selfish desires that we have in our nation today.
Thank you, sir. Willie Lawson, my good friend. What are you seeing and what are you hearing when you tap into, touch the pulse of the people with your radio?
You know, it's interesting because what everyone said is true. You know, we are so focused on ourselves. And it isn't, and really doesn't have anything to do with where you live, whether you grow up, and these are just a local thing, whether you grow up in Belmont Heights or whether you grow up in Fishon. Those kids have the very same problem themselves. And it's all about them. And when I hear people call in and I interview folks on, you know, I don't have a national radio show like Malcolm because Malcolm's a man and I'm just sitting down with a couple of chairs but what you hear is people are still concerned about themselves. The idea is that, and if I can speak for just a second, everybody knew I would, right? Just for a second, I don't think that I'm blaming government. Because that leads to the very same thing we're all talking about. We're looking for the boogeyman. We're looking for somebody to point at. The person we should be pointing at is ourselves. Our kids are a mess because our parents are a mess. You know? That's the big deal. So if we want to start solving these problems in a real way, we've got to start doing a lot of introspection, saying, what am I offering to this? And that's what we do on my show. I know my show's been on since March 2008, and I always end the show with what you can do. What are you going to do? Not what you want them to do, but what are you going to do to change your situation where you live? And I said, you might have to just start in your own house. Forget, you know, the battle cry is, you know, we always hear, we need to turn our country back. Well, you can't control your own house. How you possibly take your country back? Get your children are out of control. Your community's out of control. And you're trying to take back your country? How about trying to take back your living room?
Mark, roll the second clip.
Go get him, Willie.
I won't move slow till I see the light. We the people of the United States will not bow down to the tyranny of evil and hate. We have buried the ghosts of the past. Now we're building a foundation so our freedom will last.
It has been said that the future is unknowable, so the past is all we have. We must look toward the things. Carl is using our history to create new ideas that can help all Americans.
Here we are at the Kelly Ingram Park. K. Carl, what is the significance of this park?
Well, you know, see, this park commemorates that event that happened in the 60s with Bull Connor when he unleashed his water hose and canines on innocent and nonviolent protesters.
I was alive during that period. I was just a young boy, but to watch it on TV, it was something. My goodness, here are the dogs.
I do a lot of speaking, and when I go out, talk to different groups, predominantly sometimes black groups, and I ask them about George Wallace, I ask them about Bull Connor, and which party established the KKK. They all say the Republican Party, but in actuality, in terms of history and facts, they were all Democrats, and it was the Democratic Party that started the KKK. That history is not being told.
K. Carl, we've been talking a lot about history, but now let's talk about your new approach to history. You're a Frederick Douglass Republican.
Yes, sir.
How are you accepted when you say you're a Frederick Douglass Republican?
It's very positive. Well, I learned that whenever I evoke the name of a beloved family member like Frederick Douglass, and I expound on the values he thought was important, those 4 life-empowering values: respect for the Constitution, respect for life, believe in limited government, and believe in individual responsibility, I pique interest, I get attention, I get a chance to engage. I don't use the word conservative. I don't call myself black conservative because when you think about it, back in the 50s and 60s, what we've just been talking about, it was conservative Democrats who did everything they could do to block civil rights legislation. And Republican Party, now we're using the same word, but 2 different meanings. Conservative Democrats wanted to hold dear to the principles of their racist fathers. Conservative Republicans, we want to hold dear to the principles of the founding fathers. Same word, 2 different meanings.
Frederick Douglass himself, was he a Republican?
Frederick Douglass said on one occasion, "I'm a black, dyed-in-the-wool Republican." And I don't intend to become a part of any other party except the Party of Freedom and Progress. He was talking about the Republican Party. Douglass did not ascribe to the slave narrative. He didn't think that black folks should be treated as a special class of people. He said, leave them alone. And the God inside of him, that spirit inside, he will rise. But don't create laws that's going to put him to an economic and political disadvantage. Don't treat blacks as a special class of people. Treat them fair, but no favor.
Fair, but no favor.
That's what Douglas talked about. So that's what has to happen. Douglas talked about this inverse relationship between power and rights. The slave master had power. Douglas had no rights. Progressivism is a massive centralized government where they have the power, but we have very little rights. That's slavery. Right. That's tyranny. We have to educate. We have to enlighten. And that's why Frederick Douglass is key. Because we have in Douglas' own words what he dealt with as a slave, and how he got delivered through the power of the Constitution. That's why Douglas is a perfect icon to reignite America's passion for liberty. We lost that passion because a lot of people think that voter apathy just comes in one form. It doesn't. Voter apathy comes in 2 forms. You have those who don't care enough to vote and those who don't care enough how they vote. So this whole thing about how the government is becoming large and it's the great enslaver.
K. Carl says something here that regardless of what your party affiliation is, it is important for us to think about. Too many people don't care enough to vote, and then so many don't care how they vote. And that has led to this next question. And Doctor, I'm going to start with you again. Black folks were angry 50 years ago for various subtle reasons. And we're still angry today for many reasons. there was white folks angry then too. But let's deal with the black issue right now. We'll deal with the other in a minute. Why are black folks still angry en masse almost today? Why, in your opinion?
Well, when you spoke earlier about the millennials and the me generation, I looked and had a reflection on my life. And I've been in the movement for 40 years plus. I mean, I was advocating and fighting in the integrated middle school and junior high school, and been involved in a number of issues, because I felt like if God created me and He created a sister and a brother who may look unlike me, then why should I be the forgotten brother? I should have privileges like the next person in America. Now that's been the way I've lived my life. And so when I look at that, many of us have been taught, we've been fed, we've been schooled that we should be educated. We should do this, that, and the other. And just as sure as we get some of these things, we still are forgotten about when we get to opportunities for promotions and jobs and this, that, and the other. I mean, and it happens in all these organizations in America, across the board. It could be the university system, it could be government, it could be anywhere. That is one reason why there's a lot of anger, particularly with people in the African American community. We've been told to get prepared, and when we get prepared, we're so often forgotten. It's not good enough to find a one person or two people and put them as a CEO of a country, of an organization, and all the other blacks are way in the bottom of the organization, and they'll have no opportunities and no opportunities for advancement. That is not good enough. We have a large God. Now that's my philosophy. And if He is that large, we should be able to have people who can do greater things than what we've experienced in America. That's been that's one of my concerns. And let me say this too, on the backs of poor parents who didn't have a lot of opportunity to do very much of nothing, but they worked like mad, sun up and sun down, to get their children educated. They wanted to see some progress. And a lot of these kids didn't get what they really went after, because people still didn't give them opportunities. I'm a product of the CETA program. I finished a master's from the University of Florida. And when I came out of school, I had to go to work for CETA, because there was no jobs in Palm Beach County that I could have gotten during that time. It had to be the government program. Thank God for government help. Had it not been for government, I'm not sure where the hell I would have been when I graduated from the University of Florida. So I don't think one recipe or one diet fits all of nobody in America. The Bible speaks of the poor. There will be poor people until Jesus gets back, or whoever we believe in. So we have to have other programs to satisfy people who are less fortunate. But I do believe there's sometimes too much intervention in terms of people's lives, and sometimes there's not enough, because people do need help. And I am one who worked in the anti-poverty movement. I saw what government programs did to poor people and allowed them to get up and out. Many of them who are in universities today came out of poverty and public housing and other places.
Professor, there's a lot of angry young people, black and white. I mean, they're angry. I see a lot of angry young white people.
Yes, I see a lot too.
And where is this youth anger coming from?
I think that a lot of it is glamorized in our pop culture. And it's coming from what they see on television. It's coming from how they interact with one another. I mean, I teach in a school that's in a suburb of Tampa, and many of our students are doing pretty well. Their parents are doing pretty well, but I'm sensing, why you got this look on your face, or why are you so angry? Why are you trying to be thuggish, ruggish bone, or what have you? And what I mean by that is, they watch MTV, they watch even BET and all these other shows and TV shows that brings inner city culture into different places, and it's mixed. But there's nothing wrong necessarily with inner city culture, but when you have this anger that you're trying to pronounce, and that's what's cool, and that's what gets you by, it's really sad. And I'm asking a question Why are your pants sagging? Why are you walking like this? You don't know really what it is to struggle. So you do have people who are in the cities who are struggling, their families are struggling financially. Now, I don't always put that on any particular person. People make decisions in life. And some people succeed. They come out of poverty. You know, when a person understands that I'm not here in this, this government housing for generation after generation. I'm going to be here. I'm going to get the help I need. And I'm going to have better for my next generation. That's fine. That's how it should be. But when people, they start glamorizing it, and that's what they're looking forward to, then you can't expect them to do above or beyond or even anything different than what they see and what they internalize. It's their worldview that needs to change.
Colonel, you grew up at a time when you saw real discrimination, being Latino in this country, but yet you have succeeded. Are you angry? And if so, why so? If not, why not? But I see a lot across this country. I'm talking about from Los Angeles all the way up to New York, the barrios of New York. I see a lot of angry young Latinos there. How did you overcome that?
Well, I think I was the last generation. I think I was the last generation that actually had any awareness of history. I grew up in a household. My mother was a university professor. She got her PhD, and she got a master's degree from NYU back in the 40s as a Puerto Rican woman. And my father was from Cuba, and he was the first TV commentator in Puerto Rico and the third in Latin America. And my father made it very clear to me in 1968 when this gentleman came to the house, and we just bought air conditioning, and he was going to install it. And this strapping man, you know, with a dirty shirt and dirty pants, got to the back of the truck, Cuban guy, and he lifted and he put the air conditioning on his back. He went to the inside the house and he installed it. And my father says, remember that. That guy 3 years ago was a mayor of Havana. And he was an engineer. But the one thing I would like to say is that those are the lessons of history that we have forgotten. As far as me, my success in the military was one based on I did not feel that I had any. I was driven by patriotism. I was not driven that the military owed me anything. The military doesn't owe me that much. I was very proud of having the U.S. in my uniform, and I was very proud to, during the war, the great things that we were doing. Did I pay attention to the Hispanics that did great things in the war? Absolutely. Did I pay attention to what was going on with Hispanics in senior positions in the military of rank? Absolutely. Did I feel that they were mentors of mine? Absolutely. Did I make it an issue? No.
Let me ask you this, Colonel. There are so many who come here from Puerto Rico or maybe Cuba, Africa, wherever. They come to this country, and those of us who have been here for 300 and 400 years, we don't seem to get it.
Well, you are old.
What's the difference? What's the difference in those who come here to this land from somewhere else and those of us who have enjoyed this all along?
Some come to this land because they have been living under dictatorships and very difficult situations. Some of them have come to this land because of opportunity. They are living democracies, but they're not precisely the most advanced economically. And they come here not expecting a handout, but they come here with a sense of hard work. And the history of this country is that. We cannot limit this discussion to blacks, Hispanics, or whatever, because at the beginning of the century, if you ask any Italian American, they were discriminated tremendously. The Irish were drunks, the Italian Americans were greasy wops because they were loud at this and that, but you don't see them talking about that anymore. They have overcome that. They have blended into the culture. And in the Hispanic community, I think the best example are the Cubans. The Cubans got here and they says, what do I need to do? Well, we're going to pay you 5 cents to clean that tile on the floor. So they got paid the 5 cents. They didn't demand anymore. They got paid the 5 cents regardless of what degree they had, and they saved 3 cents for the family and for other things. And at the end of the 5 years, they were buying the businesses. Go to Miami and you'll see the effects of that. If we were to share that attitude and that history with the rest of America, not just the minorities, but the rest of America, we're going to find out that we have more in common than we really believe and that we really are aware of. If you talk to any Irish person or any German person, they will tell you, well, I remember my great-great-grandpappy. He was in trouble, and he was chased around. Right here in Tampa, in the corner of Armenia and Howard, they used to hang Cubans. In New York, they used to have signs that says, apartments for rent, not for Cubans. But that died away. And if you go to any meeting in the Cuban community, they don't talk about that. They overcame it and said, what do I need to do to be part of this great culture? That was a bad chapter. What do I need to do to be part of this great culture? Then you have the great role models that you have today.
Malcolm, talk about assimilation. What's the importance of that?
Well, you know, based on what the Colonel just said, you say all the time, you know, why is the black community still hanging on to this? Why? May I pose that question back to you, sir? Why is that the case? So you just spoke about the Italians getting over, the Cubans getting over. So what is up with the black community? Tell me.
I think, and we'll see it here in the film a little bit, many times the person who is enslaved.
Give him the mic. You need to keep this mic. We got enough mics here. Okay? Don't give that one up again.
I think many times. That's a bad one.
My good friend. I think many times the person who has been enslaved or fed a certain mind or have been a part of a certain mindset for so long, he doesn't necessarily seek liberation from that. Many times like a Stockholm Syndrome victim, or to put it more simply, a person who has been abused for a long time. When someone comes along to say, you can be free, and what they're doing to you is wrong, you know what will happen? Many times they'll defend the abuser. The person has come to liberate them, but then they step between the abuser and the liberator, because at least they're familiar with the abuse and they're afraid of the unknown. That's a very deep subject that we must address, because there is a certain pale beginning to fall upon the American psyche, and we're becoming a people who are turning away from, as the Colonel was saying, can do, to what can you do for me? Pastor, do we deal with that from the pulpit enough? Self-reliance. Do we deal with that? How come Christianity hasn't, let me ask you this question. Why is it that Christianity hasn't really dealt a death blow to racism in this country?
Okay, very good question. I would say that the gospel addresses the need for everyone to be treated equally. When the church models the example of Jesus Christ, and when the church is consistent in the way how it treats individuals, I believe we will see a great movement towards the death of what you spoke of, the racism, the anger that exists in the black community. I also believe that blacks, by and large, must understand that in 2013, the country does not owe them anything. We have this mentality, some of us, that there is a debt that needs to be repaid, when in reality, the debt has been paid. It's paid in the person of Jesus Christ. And once that is accepted, and the individual comes to terms with the fact that, well, he is now redeemed, and perhaps the past, the previous generations didn't have it so good, but now we can move on. We have the opportunities, and we can get trained, we can learn, and we can advance, we can be prosperous, and we can learn to love our neighbor as ourselves. Then I believe we'll see the death knell of racism in the church. So I think Christianity addresses it. I know the scriptures addresses it, but whether or not it has been dealt with from the pulpit, that should have been, that I can't say, but I do know that in my pulpit it's addressed on a very regular basis. So I'm really
Same thing? Same thing. Well, I know that even that one, you know, we're supposed to love themselves. And that's, how can we learn to love someone else when we, you know, stuff inside of us that we're dealing with. You know, I think we're so me, but trying to cover up with a lot of insecurities, you know. You're right about the fact that, you know, yes, we're free and then we're not free at the same time, especially, you know, mentality-wise. You know, we're holding back so much of that resentment. There's not enough forgiveness. There's not enough love. And yes, just put it past it. I mean, with my family, my grandfather came here smuggled out. The one who smuggled him out of my family, he tried to escape and was never seen him again. My grandfather was the head of the National Bank of Cuba. And so he worked hand in hand with Fidel, saw a lot of the insides and wanted out. And almost died for it, trying to get out. Taken up in the middle of the night, scooped up, and my grandma didn't know where he went for 2 years. And coming here, you know, head of the national bank of the country, having to come here and go get your GED at Leto. And that's what he did. He drove a truck, and my turning point was sitting at the table with my grandfather. And I think that hate that we see so much is a lot of misunderstood hate and misdirected hate, where a lot of people my age don't have those fathers, especially, you know, in the African American community, black people. Where are those grandparents? Where are the fathers? Whether they're locked up for a lot of other reasons or just not there. They don't have that, and I bet deep down inside that hate, they don't know what to do with it. And our culture, whites, Hispanics, blacks, we love the things that's killing us, and that's a part of the misdirected hate, misdirected love, and it's, you know, all the rap culture, the music, the shows, we love those things that are killing us inside, and we don't even realize, or they don't realize it.
Willie, as we enter this phase of the conversation, in your opinion, what is character? King talked about it in his speech. He talked about the content of character, and we're going to deal with it a little bit deeper here tonight. But in your definition of it, what is character?
Wow, you gave me the hard question. Actually, we make these things a lot harder than they have to be. Character is simply doing the right thing when no one's looking. It's very simple. We complicate it. People write books and movies and do this stuff. It's doing the right thing when no one's looking. You know what? A lot of us have the ability to know what the right thing is to do. The word says that we know what the right thing is to do because we know. You know what? You don't have, you know, there's a lot of greed. It's about 400 degrees hotter up here because of all these degrees up here. But you don't need to greed to know what the right thing is to do. You just don't. And do we do that when no one's watching? Because the fact of the matter is that, like I was talking about before, someone's always watching. You know, God is always watching. And I think that when we do those things we're not supposed to do, that's the part where we don't like ourselves.
Kelly, we have time to run one more clip.
Can I add something?
Yes, go ahead.
I'd just like to add, and just kind of piggyback on what Mr. Lawson said, and that is you cannot teach character without teaching God. And if you take God out of the equation, then you lose the formula necessary for success and moving forward and be successful and moving away from evil in society, especially in the minds and hearts of the young. Thank you, sir.
Intimidated by name calling. Let them call you racist, let them call you Akatab, let them call you whatever they want. This is the greatest country in the world.
Reverend Jesse Lee Peterson is no stranger to controversy. Reverend Peterson is the founder of the South Central Tea Party. He recently held a rally to protest against the NAACP. The event was held across the street from the NAACP's National Convention in downtown Los Angeles.
What about being black?
If you want to know what socialism looked like, take a look at the black communities. 50 years ago, the government came in under Lyndon B. Johnson and said to black Americans, we're going to take care of you, your family, but you can't have a man in the home. So the government became the daddy of the family, and if we remove that father, then God's love can't be there. There's no protection for them. And a lot of the kids grow up, boys and girls, looking for love in all the wrong places.
Reverend Peterson is the founder and president of BOND, the Brotherhood Organization of a New Destiny.
BOND is a home for young men that we bring in from around the country. Our purpose is to rebuild the family by rebuilding the man. We've been around for 20 years now. We show these guys first how to overcome anger. We help them find jobs and start businesses. We encourage them to get married before having children. Also, to start judging people based on character and not color. Because a lot of these guys have been deceived that race is their issue, when it's really not. It's the breakup of the home and the anger that they feel from that. When I was growing up, I had this desire for my dad. It was like something was missing in me. I had like an emptiness. And as a kid, I knew it was for my father. And so I would ask my mother, well, where's my dad? You know, how come I can't be with him? But she was angry at him because he got her pregnant and denied it. Wow. And as a result, she didn't want me to have anything to do with him. Wow. And so she tried to keep me away from him. So I grew up a little empty on the inside. I moved to Los Angeles at the age of 18. And at the time, I didn't really know how to deal with life. I was insecure, had a lot of doubt and fear. Went to some of the churches in the area, and they said it was racism and not anything else. So for the first time, I started to resent white Americans because I believed the so-called leadership that they were my problem. I ended up on welfare out here in California because I was told by my friends that if you're black, you could go down to the welfare office and tell them you can't work, and they'll give you money. So I did that. They gave me money. Did it work? Yeah. Wow. They paid my rent. They did everything for me. But I got worse in life rather than getting better. Absolutely. Yeah, because when you don't work, you know, the took away your incentive. Yeah, I did. And so what happened was my self-esteem went to hell in a handbasket. So one day I asked God to let me see myself. And out of nowhere, he allowed me to see that I had this resentment, but the resentment was toward my mother first. So I went to see her because I wanted to tell her I was sorry for hating her.
You had this conversation with your mom?
With my mother. Wow. And it was heart to heart. Yes, it was the hardest step I ever had to take. And so, for the first time, she told me about her life, and exactly what happened to me happened to her. But when I said to her, I'm sorry for hating you, in that very moment, God took away all my fears, all my doubts, all my insecurities, and my worries, and he gave me perfect peace. My whole world changed. And then I realized, wow, this is why black people are suffering. It's not because of racism, but it's due to this anger that they have from their homes. And these racist black leaders are building on that rather than telling you the truth about it.
We're both ministers, but let's talk about the black preacher for just a moment. He is missing in this process.
They're on the wrong side of the issues. For example, abortion out of control in the black community. 70% of Planned Parenthood abortion mills are located in the inner cities around the country. Over 1,500 black babies are aborted every day.
Now,
the African American community is the only community that you can go back and historically see was targeted by Planned Parenthood in particular. The founder of Planned Parenthood, Margaret Sanger, had a project that she called the Negro Project. She funded black pastors and other leaders, which they very proudly proclaimed that it's okay to control the birth rate of the black community When abortion became legal in 1973, and when Dr. Alan Guttmacher became the head of Planned Parenthood, he expanded the services that Planned Parenthood provided to include abortion. In 2008, there were more black children aborted in the state of New York than were born. How can New York be upside down in abortions if blacks are not being targeted? I remember in 1973, my mother and I were talking about abortion, and my mother laughed. She said, there is no black woman on this earth that would ever kill her baby in that way. Not when we come through slavery. That will never happen. I am sure that as she's looking down from heaven, she is weeping. Our people perish for lack of knowledge. Because if our people don't understand that we are literally perishing, the #1 killer of African Americans today is abortion. We are perishing. And so to support a party or platform that has right within its planks, let's fund abortion, but let's don't tell you, don't get pregnant outside of marriage, then you don't need an abortion. If we're not going to explain that to our voting African American community, then when we go to the poll, we think we're doing something right, voting for something that actually could kill us.
In Black America, 14 million beating hearts have been stopped since 1973. Blacks make up 13% of the United States population, yet we perform almost 40% of all abortions. If we can't value the beating hearts inside the womb, how can we value the beating hearts outside the womb? What does this say about us as a people, as a nation?
I'm going to take just a couple of responses here on the platform. And Pastor, I definitely want to hear from you on this. And then maybe one more. Malcolm, perhaps you know this on family. What has happened to the family in this country? I see men here. So this is a question that we must answer.
Absolutely. Let me just begin when I was a teenager. When I turned 16, 17, and started to like the young ladies, my parents made it very clear to me that if I were to impregnate a female, that it's all on me. I'll have to take care of her. They were going to wash their hands of it, and it would be my responsibility. And I feared that because I enjoyed the blessings and the handout from my parents until I turned about 18 or 19. I would say that we need to teach responsibility to the young men. The fact that each time they cause a child to be conceived and then they fail to take care of that child, they're adding to the ills of society. We have a 72% illegitimacy rate in the black community today that is unacceptable, and someone needs to say that is wrong. Now, sexuality being what it is, one of the strongest drives in the human race is the drive to reproduce. However, that can be tempered by proper training and proper discipline in the home. Of course, if there's no father to discipline a young man, then he's going to run wild. So that's where the church and the community of the Lord would have to come in and begin to be his mentor, what have you. Having said that, young ladies must be taught to respect themselves, their bodies, and there's nothing wrong with distancing yourself from a young man in that way. We got to get away from the mentality that having a child out of wedlock is a badge of honor. It is not. Getting pregnant when one is 15 or 16 or 17 without a husband is not a badge of honor. So a massive campaign of not re-indoctrination, but rather the instilling of good moral values and standards that has been lacking, and we have outsourced that to other people. That has to be brought back into the black family, and it needs to start today.
Very good.
Well, when it comes to, there are always going to be evil people in the world, Reverend Bryant, yeah? But they're not going to go away, you know? And how do we temper that with good people? I believe there are more good people in the world than there are bad people in the world, okay? And we have to overshadow the bad people because they're absolutely everywhere. The problem is you've got not only our political system, which I think is highly dysfunctional, but you've also got a frenzy in the media, which is a pop cultural attitude, where everybody just wants the spotlight for their own self-purpose and power. It is really all about the power that people seek. That's why I think, you know, hey, look around in your own properties today. The same cats who are running the homeowners associations who want to mess with you and what you can do are the same cats running for Washington in politics. You know? And that really is the problem. It's the power they seek, and they feed on people. Now, we come from, make no mistake about it, the greatest country in the world. If anybody doesn't think that, you can leave the room now. You understand? Okay? We really are from the greatest country in the world. There's no mistake about that. But you take a look at our history, you take a look at the culture of this country, and it's fascinating. And as a young man myself, I have never understood the ignorance of some Americans as to why they do not embrace cultural diversity. And that is the richness of our world. Why would you push that under the carpet? How boring would it look if we all looked the same and acted the same, man? What would that be? It's not a world I want to live in. We've got to embrace ourselves. We've got to embrace the... I love people of all kinds of funny looks, and even some of the people, look at how funny these people are, you know? They're fabulous, but that's life, man!
Given the significant number of divorces in the black family, I would say that when we think of family, that it's not the type of tactical family that we knew of when my mother and father lived together for 60 years. We have perhaps a male that made a baby and a female who gave birth. But even if they're not together, there's still no reason for them not to be mother and father to the best of their ability to a given child. I think the problem is that we have not been able to allow that interaction with daddies and mamas like they should have, even if they were separated in the family. And that has created a lot of ills with many of our children because they've come up with a lot of hurts and a lot of pains. And many of them have chosen to have children. I've taught kids, and they've said to me they had children because they had so much pain. That was their way of having a little love in their lives by giving birth prematurely. That's what happened to a number of our children.
Thank you. This is very quickly. There is a sense of, there is a feeling of victimization, that when we have it rough, we feel like victims. This country was not based on that. Everybody was a victim in this country when it was started, and through its history, but we did not allow it to define ourselves. There is a History Channel documentary based on the Tuskegee Airmen. It's called Red Tails. At the end, they spoke about all the discrimination they went through. They were discussing how horrible it was. And at the end of the show, the commander, one of the commanders of the Tuskegee Airmen, a colonel, he said, you know, they asked him about that. And he says, you know, we have been going through periods in history in which our country may have been ailing, but we have to hold Lady America's hand and don't leave her. Kelly, if you would come for a moment. Folks, I'm going to turn it over here for a moment here to Kelly Clem, and I want some people to stand up here right quick. You stand right here beside me. I want to acknowledge Karen Giroux. Karen, are you here? Stand, please. Mark Smith, who is here. Please continue to stand. Mark Smith. Tim Curtis. Kelly Rickman is already here with me. Kimberly, please stand. Debbie Cox Rice. Russ Rickson, Susan McKinnon, and Mark Proctor. These are the people who have helped us put this on tonight. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Mark, play that clip, please, if you would.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights.
Across this world about liberty and freedom. If we start to dim that light in America, there's going to be darkness all across the world, because that's why people come to America.
If I were to describe America to someone who has never been here before, I would say that it's paradise on earth. I would say that America is a gift from God. I would say that it's the land of the free and home of the brave.
We are in a country that we can celebrate who we are. And I'm proud of that. I mean, I'm proud. When I see the flag going up in the air, I get teary-eyed because I'm proud of where I am.
Our country's not perfect, but it's the best example of freedom. We can take our individual talents, our God-given gifts, and make life better for others as well as ourselves.
Mark coming up. Guys, I just want to tell you that we wanted to sponsor this event and we want to support CL because we find that in this country there is far too much division. I am sick of the fact that politicians are trying, we've constantly got battles. It is time for us to come together as Americans. We the people have got to solve these problems. Amen. And so I'm a proud sponsor of this along with Mark, and I want to tell you that as a history teacher, by the way, I live the dream, that's my boss right there, that for me, personally, I'm trying to find a way that we can solve some of these problems. You know that this is the 50th anniversary of the I Have a Dream speech. And I can think of no better way to celebrate that than to support Reverend Bryant in this effort to be a part of the new Underground Railroad, to be a part of the solutions. And I'm going to tell you something. If you've ever read that speech or listened to it word for word, that is a powerful speech. And the fact of the matter is, this is not the dream. The dream is not babies that are unwanted, families that are completely broken up. The dream is not government dependency. The dream that he had is home ownership, not public housing. The dream, we've got to fight for the dream. And I fight with CL because this is what he's doing with this Content and Character Tour. We are fighting for the dream that Martin Luther King spoke of. And I'd like to turn it over. My good friend Mark is going to tell us how we're going to keep fighting for the dream. Yeah, do I wish more people were here? Yes. Do I wish the microphones worked? Absolutely. But I'm going to turn it over to Mark.
Isn't she inspirational? No great nation can stand divided. All great nations have one thing in common, and that's unity. And a unified nation can accomplish tremendous things. And our nation has accomplished just unbelievable things in its history. We send spacecraft to other planets now. And we're not going to be able to do these types of things in the future, unless we're united. And one of the things that you all did tonight, and I really appreciate you coming out here and taking the time to come out, but what you did tonight was you laid down tracks on the new Underground Railroad to the next city. And some of us here, what we did is we went out and we wanted to do something for our community to help heal the divisions. And we put up our own money and underwrote this event. But in the next city, at the next stop on the Underground Railroad, they may not have that kind of money. And one of the most powerful things that we have in our souls, in our bodies, is goodwill. And there's an abundance of goodwill in this room tonight. And what we want to do is put some of that goodwill on the train and send it to the next city. And so what we're going to do is, if you would be so generous, and it's not, how much you give or what, but we do have some baskets to pass around, and if you could put, something in it. We want to send something on this new train to the next city. And there is no greater task in our time than to heal our nation and to become a united people once again. And I just thank God that CL was able to come tonight. And what an amazing panel that we had. Truly of our time. So thank you very much for your time and attendance tonight.
Yes, I'm going to if there are any audience questions now, before we show the final clip, I would like to take them now. Are there any? Hey, you guys help me look. Let's see, I saw your hand in the back. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I have a question. No, right behind. Let it go. Right behind you. You're next. No, you go ahead. I work with the wife. Go ahead with your question.
This is for Saul. Mr. Watson and I work together, and we worked together my entire teaching career. And I just want to say thank you first, because when I first started teaching 10 years ago, I learned a lot from him, and I hope he's learned something from me in turn. We worked together in the classroom as teachers, and I want to know what you think makes our relationship work as a black teacher and a white teacher.
Hey, cool. And this is Scott Dreyer, my co-worker and a good friend. We teach each other. He calls me Salt, and I call him Pepper. And he can confuse people. So I think the whole idea that Scott and I, we get along well together because we respect each other firstly. And that goes a long way. And something I was thinking, the Colonel even said this earlier, and I haven't written down on my paper, I had to take notes from the teacher. The whole idea about victimization, that the wrong lessons have been learned from the civil rights era, I think, by this generation, because they think of themselves as victims. So not only do you have blacks thinking of themselves as victims, but you have every subgroup of mankind and womankind thinking of themselves as victims. That's how they define themselves. When I look back at the civil rights movement, and I hear about, I remember growing up during the 1980s, Reagan era. I enjoyed myself growing up there. I heard about slavery and so forth, but I didn't think that I was a victim. I thought to myself, look where I've come from. So that when I meet someone like Scott, my closest friends have been just, I grew up in North Miami Beach, Florida, so I've had friends from everywhere. So when I meet someone who's white, I don't think of myself as someone who's oppressed me, because there are no slave owners still living anyway. I don't think of myself as being a victim anyway. I think of myself as that person. I respect that person because they have played a role in their ancestors, and if they're immigrants, great. They played a role in the founding of this nation. See, my blood and my ancestors' blood was the blood that helped build this nation and what it is. How dare I run away from this nation and say I hate this nation? That's like spitting on their graves. That's exactly what that is, actually. So we get along well because we actually respect each other. And you respect me as a male, not just necessarily as a black male, but we both are conservative. So we have that mindset together. But even if we were not, of the same mindset, we still respect each other. And I think that's the biggest thing.
Very good. Thank you so much. Young man. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I heard a lot of different topics tonight. But one thing I didn't hear, and I want to say this because I strongly believe that I benefited from this. Okay, I was born in 1968. Okay,
You look great.
Affirmative action. And my mother used to tell me, I've been working with lawyers, attorneys, judges since I was 17. And my mother said, because of affirmative action, I got those jobs. And as far as I'm concerned, I believe it. I think that because the playing field wasn't level to begin with, certain people needed that just to get in the door, not so much as to prove themselves, but to say, you know what, I can do that job just as good as anybody else. And thank you for helping me. So,
Professor, you know what, Professor, I want you, I thought about you when I was answering the question, but I want you to also answer this part of the question too. Yes, the playing field wasn't in fact on level, all of us know this. But do we continue affirmative action into infinitum, or does there come a time when we do something else? Answer, just answer his question. Deal with it the way you want to.
He's speaking to someone who's worked in university admissions and recruited students at the University of South Florida for 13 years. I visited the state, out of state, even took a trip to Africa to talk to students about the university. Affirmative action made the difference not only in your life, but in the lives of many of us, because had it not been for affirmative action, we would not be where we are today. I had the doors of the University of Florida to swing open to me as a student graduating from high school and living in Boynton Beach, Florida, because of affirmative action. I didn't have the test scores that everybody else needed to have, but I had the potential and the GPA to make a difference, and I went to Florida, did well, and went on to a master's and finished, got a PhD. Now, in terms of where we should be with affirmative action today, I think it's almost criminal. And I don't have to be philosophical enough to please nobody, because I call it the way it is. I'm a retired 60-year-old man who's been involved in the movement my entire life. I've been involved with NAACP here as well and in South Florida. I believe it is criminal for us to say to people about college admissions that because you don't have the 12 or 13, 1400, you don't have the opportunity to be educated at this particular institution, and your parents are paying the taxes as taxpayers. I believe there are other means where you can assess whether or not a student can matriculate and do extremely well. And that is what we have failed to do with the Michigan case and all these other issues that are creating problems that we're having today.
Are there any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
My son is Colonel Potato, and he mentioned me, so that's why I wanted to In the 70s, I was involved in a multicultural commission, presidential commission, and we dealt with the programs like this, affirmative action. In those days, we thought that it was necessary, as the pastor says now, it was necessary, the affirmative action, and we advocated for it. Nevertheless, times change. Today, affirmative action can be, as he said, dealt with in a different way. Now we are talking of equality. Equality. What is equality? Many of us do not know what is equality. Especially these programs giving abortion credits, that is not equality. That is deterioration of our culture. And affirmative action, like other educational programs, I am an educator, were like that, but not anymore. They don't work. We want to emphasize equality for all of us. Tonight, I have seen excerpts of this movie, and I am very impressed with Reverend Bryant to bring history. The history of this country is the foundation, is that history. It's so strong that nobody building on it can destroy it. We can see today some destruction, yes, we can feel it, but we can fight by bringing about our history, our foundation. What I saw, Frederick Douglass, is something that we have to think about. If we emphasize the history in our schools, not in high school, not in higher ed, since kindergarten, we have to emphasize at their own level, emphasize that beautiful history that we have that will grow. Our youth will come up for what we were when our great fathers built this nation.
Here, here.
I see why. To follow up on what the professor said, if our grandparents, and some of you, the young people, if our great-grandparents, were to return here today and see some of the things that we are about, some of the things that we do, some of the things we support and vote for, I believe that they would think that we had lost our minds. And they surely would think that we had lost our way. And so, my friends, before we roll the last clip, there is one question that I have for all of us. Is there anything in this country, when we're thinking about this, Professor, and you and I, you don't know it yet, we're going to have a long relationship, every one of us on this panel, I have a feeling we're going to have a long relationship. Is there anything that the color of your skin or your sex or your background would stop you from doing in America today if you wanted to do it? Is there anything that would stop you? Is there anything that you want to do that those things, gender, is still something to overcome, but color of skin, your economic background. I'm good friends with, well, we won't drop any names, but anyway, but he came from a very poor background and he wound up on the Supreme Court. Nothing stopped him. And so before we roll this last clip, Americans, all, we have still the greatest opportunity to be the greatest success story in the future as we were in the past. Roll the last clip. Oh, and by the way, the sound is off evidently, but it's because of the delay, and we don't have sound. Okay.
It's muted.
My last year, and I joined them.
Take it back. I think that was about 15 seconds.
My parents had moved me out of St. Louis, gang-infested neighborhoods, to the country. We raised in fresh air, we would run free and live. But I ran across people who didn't like me because of the color of my skin. Got out of high school my last year, and I joined the Navy to get away from all that. Going to the Navy, I found white folks still trying to control my life, my destiny, until one day, after coming back from Vietnam, facing the enemy without getting hurt, I had a shipmate drop 2,800 pounds of steel on me, trying to white on purpose, trying to kill me because of the color of my skin. I saw him. I looked him in the eye and he did it. I saw the look of anger. He was trying to kill me. I never seen another man look at me that way, trying to kill me. Every day of my life was going to be in pain. Broke bones, and the lady found me disabled, discharged me. Now I'm a high school dropout now, disabled now. I'm at Berkeley with other angry radicals.
Back in the early 70s, I was very Afrocentric. I had a huge afro and I was very Afrocentric. Black and proud and all that, you know. Still black and proud, but very Afrocentric. My grandfather, who, if you wrote his name on the back of this wall, he would not be able to read it because he was illiterate, and so was his father before him, and I thank God I have 2 degrees. But he came to me. He was a pulpwood cutter. He get kind of emotional when I think about it. He had his own business, had 2 trucks. He hired men to help him cut wood, pulpwood. But he was upset, I could tell. And he put his rough, hewn finger in my face. And he said to me, "Sonny, I didn't go through all that I went through so that you could be black. I went through all that I went through so you could be free." Freedom. Free to go where I never went. Free to speak your mind. Of course, free to be around whoever you want to be around. And so, when we started this Content of Character tour, I thought of the words of Dr. King when he said that he hoped that one day his 4 little children would be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. What he meant by that has been lost by those who have hijacked the dream. What he meant by that, and what I want to bring to college campuses, and Kelly and Mark and all of them, I thank you for this opportunity to do it. And all of my partners around this country who helped me. What he meant by that was this. Professor, any fool can take off the table what someone else has placed there. And what Dr. King was trying to say to us was, then let us be judged by what we bring to that table and what we contribute to our own society, because we are Americans too. And let us be judged not by the dependency, but by the contribution. And our young people have lost so much of self-sufficiency. Do we want to remind them that here in America, there's still a place for anyone who will display the content of their character.
Okay, folks. First, let's do this. Tony, am I pronouncing this right? Master de Liga Passant? Is that correct? Yes. Okay. So listen, let's give a special acknowledgement to the presence of one of a few independent journalists from Cuba that is visiting us right now. Master de Liga Passant back here, who's working to bring democracy to Cuba against all odds.
Tomorrow, live streaming will be a panel discussion. Malcolm's going to tell you a little bit more about that, but you want to tune in to that.
All right, so a couple of footnotes here. Tomorrow, 12:30, we do a live stream from our studios with Reverend Bryant and a special panel discussion that will stream worldwide on our national news magazine. It's promoted tomorrow on radio as well. 12:30, just afternoon time. You can have it while you're having lunch. You go to malcolmoutloud.tv is the news magazine, malcolmoutloud.tv. Well, you're a pain.
K. Carl Smith, my good friend, you saw him in the movie tonight. He'll be here on the 19th. I would encourage each and every one of you to come out and hear his message. The Frederick Douglass Republic. Thank you.
Okay, cool, man. All right, so listen, you're seeing, for those of you who haven't seen the film before, Runaway Slave, and I'm not buffaloing you, you've seen some of the pieces of the film up here tonight. Was that crazy or what? I told you. Now listen, I've seen this film twice. I just got my own personal copy last night from Reverend Bryant. He signed it at the house. We had dinner, and I'm going to watch it again. I told you it was the most powerful documentary I've ever seen. You can see that from the excerpts up here, and for those of you who haven't seen it, I've seen it twice, and as I sat here, I still had goosebumps running down my legs. Right? It is a great film, and it gets there. I love the film. It really is the best documentary I've seen because he hits it right on the mark. So, on your way out, take $20 out of your pocket, buy the film. He'll sign it out there. $20, he'll sign it for 20, but you know, you can always throw another 10 at him too. But you know, the bottom line is, 2014 is a big year. 2014 is a huge year, and Reverend Bryant is bringing the Content of Character Tour nationally. It's going to take a few bucks to do that, obviously. He's got to get the pockets of people to open up, because you cannot do it without money. You've got to have the money to make this thing flow. The message will get out there. Folks, when you look at the kind of couple of years we've had, from issues all the way from a Trayvon Martin deal all the way forward, back and forth, you've got to just sit and shake your head and say, what the hell is going on? Yeah. You know, so you've got to do something about it. And as I always say, get involved, get loud, get off your behind, and do something about it. Also, I want to mention Colonel E.J.'s mom over here, who spoke, who I thought was taking the whole show over. You know where he gets it from, don't you? 87 years old, God bless her. Let's give her a round.